in my years building EntreLeadership, the thing I've probably struggled with the most is consistency. And here's why, and I want to get your take on this. I'm pretty good with, let's go work on a strategic plan. Let's have a big, exciting vision. Let's pull this together. And then we go execute for a quarter, and we don't achieve the plan on the pace that I thought we would. Because the plan's just a hypothesis. I mean, it's our best hope of what we think we can do. And we get 1 or 2 quarters into this, and I'm thinking, okay, we got to hold the line. And then I start doubting the hypothesis. I'm like, maybe we're going the wrong direction. And I'll read a book or I'll listen to a podcast and I'll get inspired and go, okay, we should go that direction. And I just have that entrepreneurial, it's a blessing and a curse because I have a lot of ideas and a lot of vision. But if I'm not careful, I can be very distracting to the team because they're going, I thought we said we're doing this for the next 5 years. And now 5 months later, you want to go a different direction. How do you balance that tension of we've got to be consistent and we've got to follow through on the plan? But then there are times we need to change direction because we realize the hypothesis isn't bearing out. We learned something that we didn't know when we made this plan.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and there's kind of layers to answer it. One is if you go 5 months in the same direction, that's better than a lot of people because, sometimes in the organization it's like, here's the plan, and 6 weeks later it's gone. Or someone reads a book or goes to a conference and comes back, and now they've got a whole new plan. So I think to start with the basics, that our values have to remain consistent. Our strategy it has to change over time. So we're not ever going to get the strategy right over a 10-year period. There's no way. We have to tweak it and most likely overhaul it, not just tweak it, but overhaul at multiple points over a decade. So if the values are inconsistent, we can't lead people. And that sometimes derails leaders. We say one thing and then privately we do something different. So we're going to make sure the values are always consistent. Then the next thing is we want to make sure communication is always consistent. So what's interesting is you could have a consistent strategy with inconsistent communication and have a bad outcome. So the communication has to be constant, has to be consistent. People have to know when we're going to hear, how we're going to hear. If they're sitting around asking questions nonstop, then we're not doing a good job. As leaders, I always tell our team that you want to communicate 10 times as much as you think you should, and when you think you've done too much, then double it. And that sounds like exaggeration, but we just have to work toward communicating. Someone else said vision leaks. I added to it vision leaks and values drift. So over time, here's the vision, here's the vision, here's the vision, here's the values. And hopefully the vision and the values will remain mostly constant, but then the strategy is totally okay over time to tweak it, to change it. If we're doing it every 5 months, that's probably way, way too often, but it's kind of like if I'm driving from Oklahoma City to Tennessee to see you, I may need to reroute a couple times because I made a wrong turn. That's okay. As if we're communicating clearly and we say, hey, we thought this was going to work and it's really not, or we need to change some directions, that's okay as long as the values and the vision stays constant. That's one thing. And then at another level, so that's kind of strategy. On the personal level, consistency, that's a whole nother conversation. But I believe that almost every great leader has some righteously constant activities in her leadership or his leadership, and they could be anything. But you even like sporadic artistic people who you never can nail down and aren't good at keeping a schedule, they've got some constants you're going to see over and over again. And so what you want to do in your leadership is find out what are the consistent rhythms that help make me function at the highest level. What are the rhythms that give me clarity of thought? What are the rhythms that keep me healthy? What are the rhythms that keep me pleasant to be around? And you've got to fight for consistency in those things. When you don't have them, we become irritable, we become exhausted, we become difficult to be around, we frustrate other people. And so in our personal lives, no matter what your personality type is, you're artistic, you're free-flowing, whatever, who cares? You've got to find the rhythms that matter to you and keep those constant and consistent. And then the strategy, I hope there's some variety to it over time, because I don't know anybody who gets it as fast as the world changes now. You can't keep it right for 10 years. And then the values and the vision, like I said, we're going to keep those as constant as possible.
Well, I just had this thought as you were saying that, and this is kind of I take, monologue of something that somebody says and then kind of try to get it into a bumper sticker that I can kind of latch onto. And the bumper sticker in my mind right now is that discipline is not a personality style. Mm-hmm. You agree?
1,000%. Yes.
It's like you could be a free spirit, you could be artistic, yet there's still these constant things that if you will have the discipline to figure out how you work and then continue to, it's going to be different than how somebody else works of a different personality style, but we're still responsible as leaders to show up consistently in spite of our nuances and quirkiness.
Yes. Yeah, there has to be certain constants or people can't follow us. I'm trying to write a book on discipline right now, and my publisher, who's a fantastic partner, and we've done lots of books together, is pushing back and keeps telling me people they don't like the word discipline. They don't want to be disciplined. Discipline sounds hard. And I'm trying to figure out a way to put it that like discipline is your friend. There's a joy in discipline. I think it was Jocko who wrote the book, Discipline is Freedom. It's totally freedom. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a rigid, hyper-organized, boring person to be disciplined. You can be, like you said, it's not a personality type, but there's a good definition we use here some is discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now. And everybody wants something most. And everybody else wants something now. And sometimes we want them at the same time. I want to be in good shape and I want that donut. I want 6 of those donuts. And so in some form or fashion in your leadership, to be a leader that people will follow, there's going to have to be some areas of discipline where you choose consistently, this is who we are, this is consistently what we stand for, this is consistently what we believe, this is consistently what we as a group of people choose to want most over what may be easier or what may look more appealing in the moment or what we want now. And so yes, work in your own area, whatever your personality type, to find those rhythms. It was Duhigg in the book, The Power of Habit. I highly recommend. He talks about keystone habits. What are those habits in your life that the presence of them triggers cascading other positive habits? And when those things are not there, those keystone habits, they trigger more negative behavior or the lack of good behavior. And we talked about it before we came on. You said, and I think we both agree for us, going to the gym is one of those disciplines that it triggers me to also eat good and then go to bed earlier and wake up earlier and do my Bible plan. And
well, it's like a force multiplier. Like everything else gets better when I'm doing these behaviors. Yep. And, we see this all the time in personal finance. When we talk about having a budget, most people that have never done a budget, they hear constraints, they hear oppressed, you're taking all the fun away. Mm-hmm. But what people figure out is after a few months of budgeting, they actually have more money than they thought they did. And they have more control over their financial destiny. And that same thing is true in really any aspect of discipline. It's kind of frustrating that the stigma about that word discipline in our society and what you're saying about with your publisher is that it's like a thing we want to avoid. I think it's just an unenlightened perspective, because once you figure out how much discipline actually serves you and is not your master, you learn to love discipline.
It's your friend. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not, I love what you said too about the finances, because it's not being rigid. Then when you go out and spend something on what you enjoy, you planned for it and you're not going into debt to do it, and it's a lot more pleasant expense than one that has interest tied on the backside of it.
Well, and the other thing, I think people may feel like they have to be perfect with it. My wife and I have been doing a monthly budget for over a decade now. We've never hit it perfectly. Mm-hmm. There's been months we've gotten an A-, but an A- on a really great plan is 10x better than no plan at all. And I think the same is true in business and strategic planning. If you avoid this stuff because you feel like you have to have a perfect plan and then execute it perfectly, you're never going to get there. I mean, it's more of a directional thing that gives us a framework. But I've never found that we just, everything just lines up and then we just nail it, in the quarter and whatever our objectives are. We're always red trending down on something. But if we got a bunch of green trending up, then that kind of washes out and we're better off for it.
Yeah, I think it's great just to give yourself permission not to be perfect, because then if you, it's kind of like I'm 53 years old, and I told you before I started taking jiu-jitsu lessons at the age of 52, which seems really, really old to start something like that. And I'm not very good, but guess what? I'm getting better. So if I put the expectation on myself that I've got to be great in 6 months, I'm not going to go compete. I'm not going to go train. But because I've got grace for myself, I do show up. The same is true with a budget. The same is true with any kind of strategy for your business. If you tell yourself it's got to be perfect, then you're not going to sit down and put pen to paper or finger to keypad to create a budget. And so that permission to be close and celebrate close is a freeing and permission giving idea.